Now here in this little graph here, you can see, now is this readable from where you are? I'm not quite sure. These numbers are also in your binder, although there's some extra graphs in there as well under tab 5. What you can see is if you look at the current budget and the amount of money that actually goes for investment in kids, it's pretty small. This first category of investment that I mentioned, this human capital investment, is a tiny, tiny portion of this total tiny portion of 1.6% of GDP, gross domestic product, that's invested in kids. By way of contrast, by the way, the defense budget I mentioned earlier is 4% of GDP. The spending on the elderly is along the lines of, I think about 6-7% of GDP now. So you can see that the kids are not, they're just not a priority in the budget, just looking at it in terms of the current levels. Now here's the history of federal investment in various categories. Now what we have included here is this primary category of education and research and physical capital. The top line shows you the historic trends, the percent of our gross domestic product that we put into the total investment. That's including investment not for kids. The bottom line, which is much harder to find, again shows you where the kids sit in terms of the budget. Now this is the percent of domestic spending, so this isn't percent of GDP. This is of our total domestic spending. How much of it are we really orienting towards programs that invest in children? And by this broad definition, you see that it's not a great deal. If we add on work supports, the numbers come out a little better for the children in terms of the history, and that's mainly because of recent increases in things like the earned income tax credit, which does provide work support. And if you add on social supports, the numbers appear slightly better, and that's because what's added to this number is mainly Medicaid spending on children. But that's sort of a mixed story too, because the Medicaid spending on children is largely driven by the huge cost increases, which means if you're adding up dollars, children are getting more. But those of us who look closely at the health budget also know that the way our health budget is evolving, it's encouraging employers to drop insurance for other people, so we're not getting quite the mileage out of this Medicaid spending that we might want. Now, in all these graphs, if you look at the last years that we have here from about 2005 onward, these are projections. You'll see that in every case, no matter how we define it, there's projected to be a decline in total investment, and there's projected to be a decline in children's investment. And I want to show you just how these numbers play out in an even more dramatic way. Now think of your family budget. Suppose you had $10 in the family and you gave $1 to your kids, and your income was going to double to $20, and you still gave $1 to your kids. Well, you'd start off in the first case having 10% of your income going to your kids, in the second case, $5. But if you think about it in terms of the increments of what you're getting to kids, you got a $10 increase in income. How much did you give to your kids? You gave almost nothing out of your increase. Well, that's actually what is now scheduled in the budget under current law, under a variety of measures put out by the Congressional Budget Office, put out by the Office of Management Budget, and rearranged. And I have several graphs on this because of time. I'm actually going to only go to one in particular. This is where I've added together this basic component of research and education, added on it the work supports. And I ask you just to look at the far right graph. Are you able to read that here? This says that if you go out to year 2017, the Congressional Budget Office, the Office of Management Budget, says we're likely to spend a little over $600 billion more in total domestic spending. Now, that's largely the revenues that are made possible by economic growth. Now, if you're liberal and you think, gee, we need to increase taxes on those rich people, John Kerry proposed tax increases, sort of hinted at it, that have been on the order of about $50 billion more. And if you're a conservative, you might say, gee, we need to cut taxes more, so that $600 billion might be $500 billion. So I don't care whether you're on the liberal end or the conservative end, there's roughly in another 10 years going to be about $100 billion or $600 billion more spent on domestic policy. If you look at the current budget, where this money is projected to be spent, none of it is projected to go to kids. And that's because kids in the budget process are, for the most part, leftovers. They compete within the budget for what is left after other people get their share. Now, who are those other people? Well, quite honestly, it's you and me. Because a great deal of this money is increases in the amount of support that's going for our retirement and for our health care and retirement. And I'm not saying those are not good things, but remember, typical couple retiring today now gets benefits for about 25 years. The present value of those benefits in terms of like a 401k account is about $750,000. That's projected up to go to over $1 million for a couple retiring in about 25 years. That's contrasted with what the increases are for children, which is about nothing. So we can debate how we want government to grow or not grow. The point I'm just trying to make to you that we have to deal with is the share of the pie scheduled for the kids is scheduled to go down dramatically. And not only is the share of the pie scheduled to go down, but as this pie gets bigger, and each share could get additional filling, in some cases the children are not even scheduled to get any of that additional filling. So these are issues we have to deal with in the budget, and they're issues that I think are clear-cut and part of what this project is about. We do not have a budget that's an investment budget. It is not a budget that invests in kids. Yes, there have been some modest improvements in employment and social supports recently, but investment, except perhaps a little bit for Medicaid for kids, is scheduled for very significant decline. The nation's budget does reflect its needs and hopes. I ask you whether you think this one reflects it well. Thank you.